Have you heard of the term toxic parent? It's when parents have a bad influence on their children and are overly dependent on them. Such parents can't easily be escaped by young children. As they grow and establish themselves, they may be able to break away. My name is Sarah. When my parents divorced, I was 8 years old. Sorry, Sarah. Daddy has to leave this house. I wanted to take you with me. But custody means that it's mom's role to raise you. Daddy will help you so you won't have trouble until you grow up. I really don't want to be apart from you, Daddy. If you're not with me, you can't help me. My dad just made a troubled face and apologized. It was only years later that I realized his help meant child support. Honestly, I liked my dad more than my mom. Unable to bear his absence, I clung to him. But he left home due to adult circumstances I didn't understand. The reason I find it difficult to deal with my mom is that she wants to control me. She treats me differently when we're outside and when we're at home. She makes me do everything beyond simple chores. Even as a child, her attitude and actions made me feel something was wrong. Even if I felt it, I couldn't resist, and even though I disliked it, I thought it was normal since my friends' moms were similar. I wonder how long my mom has been like this. I remember it being this way as long as I can recall. My dad often argued with her. And my name came up a lot. He was criticizing her treatment of me. Perhaps the divorce was due to differences in parenting styles. You shouldn't do that. I'm thinking about what's best for you. If you listen to me, you'll be on the right track. There's never an answer to my questions of why not. My mom's words are always right. And it's unthinkable to even question them. Ah, the neighbor's wife. It's a relief that my child can handle being alone well. Sarah is a good girl. She said this, patting my head. But once home, she would say, Sarah, don't sulk. Take care of the house properly. She praised me just a moment ago. What should I do now? Sarah, please bring in the laundry. Then wash the dishes and clean the bathroom. With the tasks piling up, I'm in a whirl, and any mistakes lead to a long scolding. It's always been like this. It was normal, but I was screaming inside. Everything changed after my dad left. Now, she also demanded I study. Study hard, go to a good school, and get a good job. It's very important. Otherwise, you'll end up poor. I want you to study hard now, so you won't have financial troubles in the future. Yes, I replied. But talking about future income in elementary school didn't make sense to me. Still, my mom's commands were absolute, and I spent most of my time at home studying. It's still a long way off, but you can only attend a state university or public high school because they are cheaper. Keep your investment minimal and your returns maximal. Only invest a little up front for a big return later. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. But I vaguely felt she was counting on me later. It was contradictory for her to demand that I study while also not reducing my chores. She would sit on the sofa, watching TV, and keep assigning me tasks. Mom, I can't study like this. Is that okay? Oh, that's because you're not efficient enough. You have to think for yourself. I thought that was wrong, but I had no right to argue, so I had to follow her orders. I tried to figure out how to do the housework more efficiently and experimented with different methods to create time. But the result was poor test scores, and my mom was furious. You really think those grades will get you into a good school? You need to depend on yourself, so quit being lazy. My mom liked to take me shopping at the nearby supermarket. It was to showcase herself to neighbors and mommy friends as a single mom doing her best, with a smart daughter. We seemed like a close-knit family, but at home, she was a commanding officer. And I, her subordinate, had no freedom. The kind face outside and the stern face at home made me unsure of who she really was. Home became a place I could no longer feel safe or at ease. After the divorce, my mom started working part-time at a nearby food factory, often returning home late, leaving me to fend for myself. I'd come home from school, unlock the door to an empty house, and greet the silence. My mom strictly instructed me to take care of the house and study, so I never lacked things to do. I'd open the fridge and eat the meals she prepared alone. On days when nothing was prepared, I'd make something simple myself like fried eggs, boiled sausages, or instant noodles. Eating dinner with the TV on as background noise felt less like a meal, and more like just eating. Then I'd clean up and, if I had finished other chores, study. Getting new study materials was difficult without her permission, and I'd use the same ones for a while. Often, my mom wouldn't return until after I had gone to bed. And when she did come home while I was awake, she smelled of alcohol and was usually in a good mood, saying, "You're working hard on your studies. I'm counting on you." The factory was supposed to be a day job, but she frequently came home late. Was she drinking alone? Where? I had these questions, but in this house, my mom was the queen, and I, her retainer, could say nothing. I often thought of my dad and wanted to see him, but there was no contact from him, and I had no way to reach out. I'd look up at the night sky and send my thoughts his way. I later learned that the divorce agreement included a clause that he wouldn't see me. I moved on to a public junior high in the same district. What are you talking about? The most important thing for Sarah is to study. Chores are also important, the second most. There's no time for clubs. It's for your own good, so think about it carefully. My wishes for anything other than study and chores were consistently denied. And studying and chores weren't even my choice to begin with. In other words, none of my wishes were ever considered. I couldn't believe her when she said it was for my sake. As I moved into the second and third year of middle school, her commands to study intensified. Like I've said before, you have no options other than public high school. If you don't pass, you'll have to work. We can't afford private school fees. And you'll have to start working earlier than planned to contribute financially. Her words felt like a threat, and the fear made me focus even more on my studies. I worked desperately and managed to get into a public high school. I wanted to join club activities in high school, and somehow I wanted to get her approval. But before I could bring it up, my mom said, "Even though it's a public school, there are costs like tuition, textbooks, and uniforms. Oh Sarah, you should get a job and earn a bit." If I got a job, there'd be no time for club activities. She was already putting pressure on me about university just after starting high school. Studying, chores, and a job with club activities were utterly impossible. By this time, I knew my dad's child support was being paid every month, and my mom was working at the factory and had an income. Yet she insisted I get a job because we were supposedly out of money. I suspected her income was low because she didn't seem to work seriously, and probably squandered it while out having fun. Could she not even afford textbooks? And from her point of view, my earnings wouldn't be for me to use freely. She'd use them however she wanted. Though I was a high school student, I still couldn't stand up to my mom, and ended up taking a job at a nearby convenience store. Of course, I had to give up on club activities and juggle studying, chores, and work. My time became even more constrained, and I had to cut back on sleep. My high school days were spent being tossed around by the clock. As I had expected, all my earnings were taken by my mom, and I never had any to call my own. As a senior in high school, I intensified my study efforts for the entrance exams. When I asked my mom to reduce my work hours to focus on studying, she clearly showed her displeasure. However, after I explained it was to ensure my admission to a state university, she reluctantly agreed. One day, as the exams approached, she said, "Sarah, your exams are coming up soon. How are you feeling? I think you'll be okay. But just in case you fail, I've found a good job for you." She then handed me a job listing from a real estate agency. A regular customer at the bar I frequent, who I've gotten to know, turned out to be the company's president. I talked about you, and he was eager to have you, which is great. Threatening me with employment as she had done during my high school entrance exams. And now even kindly bringing a job offer. It seemed she had confessed to frequently drinking. I had grown to aspire to study business in university. So success in my exams was my only option. I decided to apply even more effort to my studies. I declared a complete halt to all work until the end of my exams, to which she said, "Well, fine. You can earn the money once you're employed." Still assuming I would need to work immediately after school. This assumption fueled my determination. And I successfully gained admission to the competitive business program at a state university. Immersed in the satisfaction of achieving my goals and resisting my mom's manipulations, she blindsided me with another outrageous statement. "Congratulations, Sarah. You truly are my daughter. By the way, you're 18 now, right? You're an adult. So, the child support payments will stop. From now on, you'll need to manage your tuition and everything else yourself. Indeed, you start being an adult when you turn 18. But cutting off child support so soon seemed unreasonable." As I struggled for a response, she added, "Also, I'm getting remarried. I'd like you to move out and live on your own." A remarriage? With whom? Since when? Numerous questions raced through my mind. But what shocked me most was her telling me to leave. Especially right after saying I'd need to fend for myself financially. He's a kind man and wonderful. But you wouldn't want to live with a man you don't know, right? It's better if you live on your own. I'll give you a special deal and pay for the deposit. And key money for the apartment. But choose somewhere cheap. Her reasons seemed valid, but it felt like she just wanted to get rid of me. Even the gesture of paying the deposit felt like a way to make it easier for me to move out. Although I had many things I wanted to say to my selfish mom, I realized that this was a rare chance to escape her. I wasn't the elementary school child I once was. I could finally leave her. I decided to move out. I secured an apartment and a job before university started. The apartment was near the university to save on transport costs. And I found a job at a drugstore chain. The same one I had previously worked at, close to my new place. The apartment was cheap and old, but having a bath was a satisfaction. Most importantly, I had managed to secure a scholarship, which relieved much of the financial burden. Doubting my mom's intentions, I had searched for ways to fund my university education independently, and landed on a scholarship, half of which was a grant. While a full grant would have been ideal, even with the partial grant, the future repayment would be less burdensome than if it were all loans. Although rent and living expenses were unexpected, they were manageable. And the freedom from my mom was exhilarating. The night before I moved out, my mom brought her fiancé home for what seemed like a farewell dinner disguised as a meet and greet. "See, Sarah, I told you he's a wonderful person. He's going to be your new dad." The man introduced was about my mom's age. He seemed kind and gentle at first glance. But soon enough, I saw hints of vulgarity behind his demeanor. I could never consider him my dad. I had only one dad. As they drank, they began to share how they met, not that I asked. It was irrelevant to me, but a moment of their story caught my attention, and I listened. To my astonishment, they revealed that their relationship began before my parents' divorce. Essentially, it was an affair. They had managed to divorce favorably without my dad knowing, and intended to marry once both were free from their previous marriages. My mom's late returns home, scented with alcohol, were because she was meeting this man. I felt dizzy with anger and disbelief, bitterly realizing that cutting ties with such a mom was the only way forward. My university life was fulfilling, a stark contrast to my constrained past under my mom's control. Although I didn't participate in typical student activities due to my busy schedule, the array of choices now available to me was liberating. Classes are fun. The joy of learning about things I'm interested in is completely different. From studying solely for exams, it's thrilling and exciting. I can't afford luxuries. But I managed to get by with part-time work. I was enjoying my university life in my own way. By my third year at university, I had made close friends. A rarity due to my previously packed schedule. There were 3 students, 2 males and 1 female, who had chosen the same classes as me since our freshman year. As we continued sharing classes into our third year, we became closer and eventually decided to start a business together while still students. Drawing from our studies in business. One friend's family owned a farm, another's a livestock business, and the third's family were fishermen, providing us with a unique opportunity to create a business that delivered fresh, affordable food directly to homes. I took on the role of salesperson, leveraging my acute awareness of others' thoughts and feelings, an ability developed from years of needing to appease my mom. Our service met a demand, and orders were constant. Initially, sales were low. But a post on social media eventually ignited interest. And with positive feedback from customers, we expanded energetically. By the time we graduated, our business was well established, thanks to expanded sourcing and sales channels. My colleagues praised me for our sales achievements. But I really believe my role was minor compared to how good they are at sourcing. At graduation, while the others chose to dedicate themselves to our startup, I requested, and they kindly agreed, to let me gain more experience by working elsewhere temporarily. I chose a management consulting firm recommended by my previous manager, whose brother owned the firm. The consulting work seemed an excellent opportunity to enhance my skills. Juggling this job with our company was challenging, but manageable, given my history of multitasking. 3 months into my job, my phone rang. It was my mom, calling for the first time since I had moved out. "Sarah, how are you? You've graduated and found a job, right?" Her tone seemed off, hinting at an ulterior motive. "Hey, now that you're working, could you maybe start sending some money home? Why are you asking for money all of a sudden? You haven't said anything for years. Why now?" "Well, you're 22 now. You know, the child support has stopped." Wait a minute. Didn't the child support stop when I turned 18 because that's when I became an adult? Caught by my question, my mom faltered. I realized then that although the law now recognized 18-year-olds as adults, it didn't make sense for child support to have stopped so abruptly. I suspected it had actually continued until I was 22, and now that it had ended, she was turning to me for money. Resigned to the inevitability of the situation, and not wanting to dredge up the past or reconnect with my mom, I chose to ignore these doubts. Reluctantly, I agreed to send her a small amount of money, not realizing this would entangle me further with her in the future. I continued to balance my job at the consulting firm with our growing business, actively involved with my colleagues' company on evenings and weekends. It might have seemed overwhelming from the outside, but I handled it with ease, having once managed even more after I started sending money. However, my mom's demands gradually escalated. "It's tight this month again. Could you send some money again, Sarah? Aren't you still working at the factory? And what about him, isn't that person working? Don't call him that person, he's your dad. He got laid off and is currently looking for a job. I've had my shifts cut back too. Maybe it's the recession." I was really not into the idea of giving my mom money again, but I found myself giving in to her wishes, despite feeling that it was wrong. I was overwhelmed by self-loathing after hanging up. At the consulting firm, a new client requested my services, and when I met the person at our meeting, memories within me were stirred. Could it be Dad? A faint memory recognized him as my dad. "Sarah, is that you?" Since he only knew me as an 8-year-old, it seemed impossible that he would recognize me, but somehow he did. I, too, wondered how I could have recognized him. After finishing our business discussion, we found time to talk alone. Sarah, I never forgot about you. I wanted to see you but couldn't because of the promise I made to your mom. It was never my intention to solve things with money, but by sending child support. I felt connected to you. But now that you're 22 and child support has ended, I've been feeling lonely, though I'm glad we could meet like this. Hearing about child support from him confirmed my suspicions. Indeed, payments had been made until just recently. After I became an adult at 18, my mom held on to the child support for 4 years, using it for her own needs rather than for me. Even before that, she hadn't spent it entirely on me but had used most of it for herself. When I shared this, my dad was shocked and seemed lost for a moment. I also told him about my mom's affair, which I had learned about just before moving out. I had suspected it back then but had no proof. Reluctantly, I had to agree to her terms during the divorce. Hearing that she's been using the child support the wrong way is really upsetting. Sarah, I can only imagine how hard that's been for you. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault, Dad. She's the problem. Now that the child support has ended, she's been asking me for money. My dad expressed his anger at the situation. After discussing how to deal with my mom going forward, he reassured me as we parted. A few days later, my mom contacted me again. Sarah, I had a bicycle accident and injured someone. Now I need to cover their medical bills and lost wages. Could you please help out with the money? Why should I take care of the consequences of an accident you caused? And is that story even true? Why would I lie? You're my daughter, you have to help your mom. I raised you, after all. I don't feel like you raised me at all. You were using the child support from Dad for yourself all this time. That's more than enough. As we spoke, memories of my childhood came flooding back, stirring a mix of anger and sadness. What are you talking about? I made you study, got you into good schools. And now you work at a good company. It's time for you to return the favor. So that was your plan all along. What am I to you, then? You're just a wallet to me. Her words had enough force to shatter something inside me. Well, too bad. The wallet is empty now. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Although I had intended to cut ties before, I had dragged my feet. This time, I was resolute. When I told my dad, he became furious and took immediate action. He served on the board of a company and got the corporate lawyer to sue my mom and her lover for compensation for the affair. Claims for compensation for infidelity must be filed within 20 years of the divorce and within 3 years of discovering the affair. Since my parents divorced 16 years ago and the affair was discovered only recently, it is possible to make a claim for compensation. Both my mom and her lover panicked as they faced the lawsuit and struggled with the financial demands from the bicycle accident. Unable to cope, they turned to me, but I refused. Furthermore, my mom was fired from the factory for poor conduct and theft of products and materials, facing a lawsuit for damages. My mom's lover was unemployed and had no money. Driven to desperation, she incredibly broke into my house without permission and committed burglary. Her twisted logic was that what belonged to her daughter was hers. However, I had moved out to make a fresh start. Previously, she had made a duplicate key to my room without my knowledge and used it to enter. Normally, when someone moves out, the locks are changed before handing over to the next tenant. But because the new tenant was in a rush to move in, only the cleaning was done and the lock change was scheduled for later. Because of the duplicate key, she was able to easily enter, but of course, the room was already occupied by another person. Even if I had still been living there, breaking in and stealing would be unacceptable, but as it happened, she broke into a room belonging to a complete stranger and was arrested by the police. Being arrested doesn't mean her debts are forgiven. After her release, she will face a mountain of debt. Until my mom is released, her lover, that is, her affair partner, will have to bear the debts alone. There is no bright future left for the two of them. Soon, I will resign from the consulting firm and focus solely on the company. I started with my friends. My dad's logistics business is going to support us, which is a good thing for our growth. As I enjoyed this new freedom, I can't help but feel a sense of ease and excitement for what's to come.